Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Jordan Peele's Us, much like his first film Get Out, is filled with subtle details that hint at deeper meaning, clues that foreshadow later twists, and Easter eggs that allude to iconic horror cinema. I gotta break down this whole movie scene by scene for everything you might have missed, mainly because I just love forcing the underground Tether version of myself to obsess over pop culture too. Spoiler warning if you haven't seen the movie yet, and let's get started. Okay, the opening title card establishes that there are thousands of miles of underground tunnels across the US, with the cryptic hint that many of them are not used, implying some of them must be, foreshadowing the later reveal of the tunnels spanning the US from which the tethers rise up. If you're interested in this, there's actually a book called Underground, A Human History of the Worlds Beneath Our Feet by Will Hunt. It explains the real-life abandoned infrastructure beneath US cities, but this grid doesn't span the whole country, so you can take off the tinfoil hat. Now, the text singles out America to establish us as an American story, the title Us also working as US, United States, and Peele suggesting that Americans fear the other when we should really fear our own reflections ourselves. You may also interpret these tunnels as a literalized version of the Underground Railroad, a network of homes that helped American slaves work their way to freedom, similar to how these tether slaves achieved freedom in this movie. Moving on to this opening shot of the Hands Across America ad. I did another video explaining the ending of Us that goes into the deeper symbolism of the 1986 charity event and a lot of the other recurring imagery, but here I want to point out the other videos that you can see on the shelves around this TV monitor. One tape is Chud, the cult classic horror film, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, a nod to the underground dwellers of this film. There's also The Goonies, another 80s underground adventure story that actually gets a few nods throughout this movie. There's also a copy of The Man with Two Brains, which could reference both the dual soul connection of these people and their tethers, as well as Get Out, in which black people were kidnapped and had their brains displaced by the brains of elderly white people. Next, we see young Adelaide, played by Madison Curry, with her parents at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk in 1986. Her father, Russell, is played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who played Black Manta in Aquaman. Now, this boardwalk actually dates back to 1910 in real life. They didn't really have to change a lot of the carnival sets. And this boardwalk actually features an underground tunnel system that's used for shelter in case of emergencies. Now, the dad wins her a prize, and Adelaide picks number 11, the first of many instances of the symmetrical 11-11 imagery found throughout this film. The Whack-A-Mole Carney wears a black flag shirt whose logo is 4 vertical black bars, kind of like 11-11. And soon after this, Adelaide passes the man with the Jeremiah 11:11 sign, that Bible verse about the reckoning of the people of Babylon, much like the reckoning this society is soon to face. Adelaide's prize is a shirt of Michael Jackson's Thriller, which is another key reference point. Jackson's red suit inspired Adelaide and the Tethers' red jumpsuits. And Jackson's famous One Glove is one of the inspirations for their One Glove. The mom warns that shirt will give her nightmares. And the rest of Adelaide's life is a nightmare. The mom also says, you know, they're shooting a movie over there by the carousel. And that's actually a reference to the 80s horror film The Lost Boys, starring Goonies star Corey Feldman, which was actually shot at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk in 1986. Down on the beach, Adelaide passes some kids at a bonfire, a nod to the opening scene of Jaws, which actually gets referenced a lot in Us. And she wanders into this funhouse hall of mirrors, where she meets her duplicate self. Now, this fear of reflections was inspired by the 1960 Twilight Zone episode Mirror Image, which is about a woman haunted by her duplicate, which Peele, host of the new Twilight Zone, said had a huge impact on him as a kid. Jordan Peele actually cameos in this scene as the voice of the narrator inside this funhouse, and I couldn't see it, but somewhere on the walls of this place are written the words "Get Out." Now, to calm herself, young Adelaide whistles the Itsy Bitsy Spider, another recurring motif in this film, perhaps a nod to the way Red climbs up the water spout one time and then does so again to get her revenge. This leads to the opening titles, featuring white rabbits in cages. Now, the white rabbit could be an allusion to Alice in Wonderland, in which Alice follows a white rabbit into an underground mirror world. Also, you may remember the song Run Rabbit Run was used in the opening scene of Get Out. Next, we meet the Wilson family, with a quick shot of their car's family stick figure sticker. Notice that the lineup order matches the way that the Tether family will later stand in their driveway. Now, this family includes Gabe, Winston Duke, aka M'Baku from Black Panther, Adelaide, Lupita Nyong'o, also in Black Panther and a ton of other movies, the daughters Zora, Shahadi Wright Joseph, and the son is Jason, Evan Alex. We learn at the end of this movie that Adelaide is actually the Tether version of herself, but there are several hints that Jason might also be secretly secretly his tethered self. I'll point out the various clues for both as we go along. But for now, I should point out that Jason is also the name of the famous slasher from the Friday the 13th movies, in which Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was secretly the villain in the first one. Jason has a Chewie mask and a Jaws shirt. There's gonna be more Jaws references later, but Zora is wearing a shirt with a white rabbit on it. Yes, it turns out everything in this movie is deliberate. At their vacation house, there's a quick shot of an old family photo in which Adelaide looks away from the camera, purposely avoiding eye contact. And the fast food they eat comes from a joint called Copper Pots, a nod to Chester Copperpot, the legendary treasure hunter in the Goonies. Now you notice Adelaide doesn't eat meat, probably because she grew up eating rabbit meat as a kid in the tunnels. Instead, she nibbles on these red strawberries, kind of similar to the way Allison Williams' character nibbles on the Fruit Loops and Get Out. Ain't right. Now in these early scenes, Gabe tells Jason a knock-knock joke. Knock knock, who's there? You who? Setting up the tethered doppelgangers, knocking down their door later on. Gabe also tells Zora that she should run in the sand because suboptimal conditions make you better at running. This sets up how Zora's double is faster than her because she has been training in bad conditions underground. Jason runs off to find a magic trick that he left from a past summer, but he doesn't remember how to use it, which could be another hint that he must have gotten swapped with a double in a past year. Adelaide experiences a flashback to her parents' meeting with a child psychologist, establishing that she did not speak as a kid because she was a tether and she had to learn how to talk. Now there's also a shot of her playing in a sandbox with red lining, and you can see her lining up animal toys in the sand in a row, with the last toy in the center being, yep, you guessed it, White Rabbit. Back in the house, we get a call back to the Itsy Bitsy Spider when Adelaide sees a spider crawling out past a toy spider. This also foreshadows the reveal that the real Adelaide will reveal herself from behind her fake version. Another clue shows up when Adelaide sees Zora in her room. One of the books on the table is They Came From Below. As Adelaide goes through her old stuff, she finds her old toy White Rabbit. And notice how she spaces out for a second? Now, it's not totally clear whether she remembers her past and is just lying to everyone, or whether she blocked out the memory. I think it's the latter, but these little clues are triggering her memories, haunting her about her past crimes as a kid. Jason scares his sister and then he hides in the closet using a toy ambulance to hold the door, foreshadowing their means of escape at the end of the movie. Now in that closet, you can see the board game Guess Who, in which you try to match the identical face card chosen by the other player, Tether Ref. There's also a game called Monster Trap, setting up this closet as a place Jason traps his monster later on. Now, on the ride to the beach, Zora brings up the conspiracy theory that the government puts fluoride in the water to control our minds. Something a shocking number of you believe, it turns out. Look, folks, trace amounts of fluoride in the water is not dangerous, and while the dentist tells you not to swallow the fluoride, if you do, it's not going to kill you. Before we even get to whether or not it's healthy, no secret government forces are trying to control your mind with what they put in the water. The only authorities trying to brainwash you are here on YouTube. But Adelaide's shady reaction to this conspiracy theory is interesting because, of course, she is a product of a government conspiracy, a fictional one, set in this movie. Adelaide also reveals herself when she snaps along to the I Got 5 on It music. She snaps slightly off rhythm, and Jason smiles and snaps synced with her, but also off from the song. Another hint that both of them might not belong in this surface world. At the beach, there's an overhead shot of the family, and notice how Adelaide's shadow trails out of line with the others, another clue of her being out of place. And then we meet the Tyler family with Josh, Tim Heidecker, Kitty, Elizabeth Moss, and their twin daughters, Becca and Lindsay, played by Callie and Noelle Sheldon. Now, there's a really interesting Easter egg with Josh here, but first, thank you to Shudder for sponsoring this video. AMC Network's Shudder is a premium streaming video service, super serving fans of all degrees with the best selection of horror and thrillers for only $4.99 a month or $49.99 per year. Shudder has the largest, fastest growing human curated selection of thrilling and dangerous entertainment. It's like the Netflix of horror. There are new spine-tingling thrillers, shocking horrors, and edge-of-your-seat suspense added weekly, and you'll have unlimited access to stream ad-free on all your favorite devices, including Apple TV, Roku, iPhone, iPad, Android devices, and more. Shudder has a unique collection of exclusive and original films and series, horror classics, and blockbuster hits. A current Shudder exclusive is one of my favorite recent horror films, Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. I just checked it out on Shudder, and it's awesome. Super violent, super explosive. It's practically a look inside Nick Cage's volcanic mind at any given second. Also, I'm super looking forward to Shudder's upcoming release of Monster Party on April 25th. The trailer for that looked amazing. Shudder's vast selection includes an extensive international library in every genre. Creature features, paranormal, slashers, sci-fi, psychological thrillers, documentaries. There's old classics like Halloween and modern favorites like Cloverfield. And to try Shudder for free for 30 days, just go to shudder.com and use the promo code Rockstars. That's SHUDDER.com, promo code Rockstars. Okay, back to Josh. Notice how he has a bunch of tattoos on his arms, including an antler on each arm. This is another nod to Get Out, in which the Armitage family has a mounted deer head, which Chris uses to fight his way out. Adelaide mentions to Kitty that she's just bad at small talk, another clue for awkwardness with talking in general. And then they talk about growing up dancing, and Adelaide said that she peaked at 14. Now, it turns out this is because it was her double who was the natural dancer, not her. She only danced because her therapist suggested some creative expression. Kitty and Josh bicker about their drinking, and Kitty jokes, "I think about murdering him sometimes." And if you pay attention later, you'll see that when Kitty's double Dahlia sees Josh's double dying outside on the boat, she silently screams/laughs. This is a release for her. Now, this whole beach sequence is a direct homage to Jaws, with Adelaide's paranoia playing out the same way Chief Brody's does. Her eyes dart from group to group, triggered by screams that are just playful fake outs. The same way Spielberg heightened that scene in Jaws. They end up getting frightened by this frisbee, which lands perfectly on their polka dot blanket, with the red perfectly covering the blue circle. It's another nod to this idea of red about to take over. Meanwhile, Jason digs sand tunnels, another nod that he could be a version who originates from tunnels, and then he sees this creepy man with blood dripping from his hands. Now, this is the tether of that Jeremiah 11:11 guy whose body we saw lifted into the ambulance earlier. This is probably one of the first untetherings. This guy's standing this way on the beach because he's the first link in this tether human chain. Now, when Adelaide freaks out over Jason having gone missing, it's not just any mother missing her son. She is worried that he followed in her footsteps and he wandered into the tunnels and got switched just like she did. Back at the house, there are a couple more nods to 11:11. The score of the game that Gabe's watching is 11:11, and the time on Jason's clock, 11:11. Adelaide also notices Jason's drawing, because you can't have a horror film without some creepy kid doodle. Notice the perspective though. Jason drew it from behind his own body, depicting his own back and his own back of the head. This could be another clue that there's actually a second Jason whom this kid has seen from this angle. In their bedroom, Adelaide tells Gabe, "I don't feel like myself," and he says, "You look like yourself." And notice how she discreetly traces some ballet positions with her foot. It's almost like she's trying to center herself, reassure herself that she is real Adelaide, or maybe gradually prepare herself for battle with someone who does know these moves. Power goes out and Jason says,
"There's a family in our driveway."
This line was a nod to the iconic creepy kid line in Poltergeist.
"They're here."
Peele said that he wanted to evoke a similar Amblin-esque predicament with a family in danger. Also notice that from this point forward in the movie, it shifts into real time. There's more fluid shots shot from a steady cam, fewer cut edits, and more whip pans over to other characters like you're turning your head. Peele wanted to subliminally signal to the viewer that we are trapped in an authentic home invasion that's unfolding in real time. The Tether family forms a line mirroring the 1111 shapes, and Gabe confronts them, but they never respond. Peele wanted this to evoke the scene in Halloween when Michael Myers is under the ghost sheet and he doesn't respond to any of the questions, with each unanswered question increasing the anxiety that something ain't right. Gabe asks Jason to go get the bat, and Jason asks, "What bat?" Maybe again, tether ref. He doesn't know what things are, but Zora grabs it and notice that she's now wearing a shirt that says "tho" or "the." Forgive my pronunciation, but this is Vietnamese translating to rabbit. Red whistles the itsy bitsy spider again as she finds the key under the rock, signaling that she is the little girl who whistled this earlier, and she remembers where the key is kept because this vacation house used to be hers. Now, the doubles of this Tether family include Red. The father is Abraham, might be named after Abraham of the Bible, whose children will inherit this earth. Their daughter is Umbrae. It's a Latin word. Umbra is the fully shaded part of a shadow, like part of the earth or the moon that's covered by an eclipse. Umbrae is the plural form, so her name literally means second shadow. And the son's name is Pluto, the Roman god of the underworld. Now, they wear red jumpsuits, and this is meant to evoke Michael Jackson in Thriller, also the inspiration for the one glove, though Peele has also mentioned that Freddy Krueger and O.J. Simpson were famous for their gloves. And according to the movie's design team, the Tethers mass-produced these jumpsuits themselves. As for the scissors, they're also symmetrical, with Peele describing how they're made up of two parts, and they lie in this territory between the mundane and the absolutely terrifying. Now, when Red moves, she scurries around in right angles, because that's how she moved down in the tunnels. It's laid out in a 90-degree grid. Her abrupt abrupt turns also evoke the memorable abrupt turns by the sprinting groundskeeper in Get Out. Notice that Jason is the one to recognize who these doubles are.
It's us.
Now, if he is actually his double, he would understand who they are. Then Red begins to speak, and her voice is cracked and strained, a nod to the damage of her windpipe as a girl, and the fact that she never needed to talk down there. Lupita Nyong'o based her voice reportedly on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who suffers from spasmodic dysphonia.
Neither the press nor the police want to investigate somebody who is not a member of my family.
And she tells her story. Once upon a time there was a girl, and the girl had a shadow. Now this shadow description evokes Peter Pan, who wrestled with his shadow, a mischievous shadow, had a mind of its own, but was still tethered to Peter. They shared their existence. Red has Adelaide handcuffed to the coffee table, the first step of her revenge for when Adelaide handcuffed her to the bed frame in the tunnels when they were girls. Red explains to Adelaide that her plan is the untethering, and she presses her face against the glass of the coffee table, cracking it. This shot lines up Adelaide's face with her reflection as the two cram into each other. The mirror glass barrier between them breaks, the same way the barrier between these two women is broken. As the Wilsons fight against and they flee their tethers, we jump over to the Tyler house, where they are attacked by their tether family. They're named Tex, Dahlia, Io, and Nyx. Io is a name from Greek mythology, and Nyx comes from Germanic mythology, a half-human, half-fish water being that lives in an underwater palace that might connect with the twins telling Jason to pee in the ocean. But Tex is an even more interesting name. And notice how the Tyler's death is set to the Beach Boys' Good Vibrations. Tex was the name of the right-hand man to serial killer and cult leader Charles Manson, who knew the Beach Boys personally, wrote a song for them. And of course, Manson and his whole cult family murdered several victims by invading their homes, just like this. Kitty cries out to Ophelia for help, Ophelia being their version of Alexa or Siri. Ophelia is a Greek name deriving from the word meaning help. The twins' slaughtered bodies in the hallway upstairs could be a nod to The Shining, the famous shot of the Grady twins, whose bloody bodies Danny sees suddenly in a hallway in the Overlook Hotel. Now, Kitty's tether, Dahlia, doesn't kill Adelaide, which is interesting. It looks like each of the tethers only want to kill their doppelganger. Notice how she's more interested in putting on Kitty's makeup, looking in the mirror. She's mirroring Kitty's vanity. Also, she cuts her face. Ugh. She's mirroring the plastic surgery that Kitty received. And the cutting could also be a nod to Dahlia's possible namesake, the Black Dahlia, the case in which a woman's face was mutilated. After the Wilsons kill the tether Tylers, they sit shocked at the table. In front of Jason, notice the bowl of Fruit Loops. It's another nod to the memorable scene in Get Out. They escape in the car, Zora's behind the wheel. She ends up fending off the attacking Umbre by distracting her with windshield wipers and launching her off the car. Adelaide goes to check on the girl, finding her mangled body in the tree, and notice how Adelaide reacts with sympathy. She tries to calm the girl as she dies. That could be because, as a tether herself, she feels a connection with her. You might also see how this moment parallels Chris going to check on the deer and Get Out, parallel runaway victim that he feels a bond with. The next morning, the Wilsons find their car on fire, with Pluto luring them into a trap. You'll notice in the second half of the movie that Adelaide's white clothes are covered in blood. Throughout the film, her clothes transition from pure white to red to reflect the revelation that she is actually her tethered self, Red. Jason lowers his mask and says, "It's a trap." And even though this is Chewbacca, there's no way this isn't a reference to Admiral Akbar.
It's a trap!
As Jason backs up and tricks Pluto into burning himself, Adelaide says no. Like with Umbre, she feels a connection to this kid. Red snatches Jason and lures Adelaide down into the tunnels. And notice how the first thing Adelaide sees before venturing down the rabbit hole is another white rabbit. Down in the tunnel classroom, Red explains her plan and what her whole existence was in the tunnels. And we see how she used the cultural influences that she remembered the moment she got trapped down there. Thriller and Hands Across America. She used these to stage her uprising. And she says the words, "It's our time now," which is another nod to the Goonies, Mikey's big speech to rally his friends in their tunnel.
Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
As Red talks, Peele frames her with Adelaide creeping up behind her so that both are in focus. It creates this unnatural visual in which neither woman takes greater priority than the other. They're finally on equal ground. And this final battle plays out like a ballet. Composer of this film, Michael Abels, used the notes of I Got Five on It, but he took inspiration for this composition from Tchaikovsky, composer of the Nutcracker. On the track list, this song is called Pas de Deux. Real sorry about the pronunciation. It means duet. It's a reference to Tchaikovsky's Pas de Deux in the Nutcracker. During this ballet battle, Red uses her expert choreography to remain in the shadows. It creates this visual of Adelaide literally fighting her own shadow. But in the end, Adelaide is victorious. And as she kills Red, she lets out this primal, animalistic scream. This is her true Tether self emerging finally. But then she looks right at the camera and gives us this creepy smile. This smile is echoed in the final shot. As Adelaide and the family drive in the ambulance over the hills past the human chain of tethers, Adelaide locks eyes with her son, Jason. And then, as the sequence reveals that she is in fact the true Tether, she leaves us again with a snaky grin. Just as Red's master plan was inspired by Thriller, so is this moment. The final shot of that music video showed Michael Jackson in this seemingly happy ending, turning back to the camera with an ominous smile, hinting that he is actually the villain and evil has triumphed. And if you believe that Jason is also his tethered self, the underground has triumphed over the surface world here as well. There are many ways we can interpret this final image of red-suited tethers victoriously lining the countryside, politically, socially. But the revelation of Adelaide's treachery suggests that the hero we see ourselves in might actually be the villain we should fear. Comment down below with your favorite moment from us, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss, and subscribe to New Rockstars for deep dives into everything you love. And if you plan to go to VidCon this year, we would love to join you, so please tweet at VidCon to let them know that you would love to see us host a panel, live show, meet and greet. Come on, let's be friends. Thank you for watching, and in case you were wondering, I'm the normal Erik.